Saying,
So I do my
so since this is a small group, I would love it if you guys would ask questions as we go through the presentation. Um, there we go. So I just want to take a moment to introduce myself. My name is Maura Downs. I'm the Managing Director of Government Contracting Services here at the Women's Business Development Center. I have two of my colleagues here on the call, Brittany Mullenkamp and Venus Martz, who are my colleagues who help me with the Small Business Transportation Resource Center, which I will talk about in a moment. But that's just a little, I've been doing government contracting for the last 15 years, and I have a kind of niche specialty in certification because I've been doing it for so long. So that is what we are here to talk about today. Okay, really quickly, the Women's Business Development Center is a nonprofit organization that's been around for a very long time. We will be celebrating 40 years next year. And we have a mission to grow small businesses. And the group that I manage here at the WBDC grows small businesses through access to government contracting. So one of the ways that we do that is through our SBTRC grant. The SBTRC is a small business transportation resource center, and we work with the transportation community to help small businesses in their contracting journey, and we provide a variety of services to those small businesses. All right. So enough background. We are here to talk about is certification right for me. I'm going to add a caveat to everything that I'm about to say, starting right here. These are unprecedented times for certification right now. Um, Things are very much in flux, more so than we've ever seen before in my, like I said, 15 years of doing this. So that does not mean that you should not get certified. What it does mean is that you should be extremely thoughtful about how your business is going to benefit from this certification. This is advice that we always gave out anyway, but in the last, 5 months, that dynamic has changed significantly. So I strongly urge you before, emphasis on before you apply, that you know how your company is going to get more business because of this certification. And I'm going to talk about that, but I just want you guys to understand that this is a changing landscape and these certifications are shifting very rapidly, kind of beneath our feet. So everything I'm just adding an asterisk for the whole everything I'm going to say from here on out, subject to change at any moment because of the uncertain political landscape around this topic. So with that, I will go on to talk. So this is the most important slide, and this is the most important analysis that you need to do before in terms of getting certified. Will this certification help me grow my business? So you need to understand what this certification is, who accepts it, there are many different types of certifications. So you need to understand that these are just a marketing tool. They don't guarantee certification, or they do not guarantee a contract. I'll say that again. They do not guarantee a contract. So they are a marketing tool that can help you get a contract. So you need to understand, is this marketing tool relevant to my target client? And that leads to the question, who is your target client? So it's really important that you understand that. If your target client is a government agency, typically, I give a big asterisk, but typically certifications are a really great tool. Government agencies have statutorily required goals that they set on many contracts. And so, as a small business that is certified, you can help fulfill a set aside goal on a contract, which means, government agency is buying janitorial services. They're required to subcontract out, 20 to 25% of that work to a certified company. So you can help get you can get a piece of that work because that government agency is requiring its prime contractor to have a certified subcontractor. So that's a really great place to be. Same with if your target company, your target client is, oh, sorry, go ahead. Someone have a question? Okay, I'll keep going, but interrupt me, no problem. Um, Small or large private companies that work with government agencies or don't work with government agencies, those often have internal goals to have participation by small diverse companies. So those are good for those target clients. That's a great idea. Small private companies, if you're doing business to business work, and it's a smaller company, the certification becomes less valuable, but still maybe a good idea. And the last one on this list, if you are a retailer that sells goods or services to individuals, so think a bakery, a barber shop, a clothing boutique. Those are the businesses where we typically say the certification doesn't make as much sense. So that gives you kind of an idea of where you should be. I'm not, I never say never, because, there are exceptions to every rule, and there are certified bakeries who operate at airports, for example, or clothing boutiques at airports. Those are rare and difficult to find. So typically, the certification doesn't make sense if your target client is individuals. Okay. So this is kind of continuing to make this point of you need to understand how you're going to use this certification, and you need to know if this is going to work for you. So, a very important point to consider is your capacity. Government contracts are typically a larger capacity or larger size. So you need to have you need to have the inventory, the employees, the cash flow to support a contract of this size. And if you don't have that, you are not going to be able to make use of your certification because you are simply not able to participate on a government contract. So you need to be thinking about, if I'm going to get certified, how would I be able to fulfill a contract if I were to get it? And if the answer is you wouldn't be able to do it, then there's no point in getting your certification. Um, I know I sound negative on this. I promise the tune will change after this slide. Next is disclosure. Are you willing to share the details of your business? I've worked with a lot of clients over the years who say, I don't want to turn over my tax return to a government entity. And I say, fine, then, but you cannot get certified if you don't want to turn over those tax returns. So, you need to be able to disclose a good amount of information about your business, and in some cases about your personal finances, which I understand some people are uncomfortable with. So that's just something to consider. You need to be very, very comfortable with turning over documents. These last 2 points I have hit on the last slide, but I will say them again. You need to not understand if this certification is going to persuade anyone to work with you. You need to know how exactly that would work, because otherwise it's not a good use of your time. And then you also have to understand that once you get the certification, the contracts don't just fall out of the sky. You still have to do a lot of work in order to get the contracts. You have to go out, you have to network, you have to bid, you have to, find find teaming partners. You have to do a lot of things in order to make the certification work for you. So it is not a guarantee that you are going to get a contract. Did I? There you go. Okay.
Hey,
So
Maura,
now we're
real
gonna,
quick, there's a
yeah.
question in the chat for you about something.
Oh, great. With the end of DEI has this. Okay. Jessica, excellent questions. Um, so there's no easy answer to your questions. So DEI and supplier diversity are not the same thing, even though it sounds like the same thing. If you go on, there's a federal website called sam.gov. On that website, you can go on there today, and the federal government is publishing its contracts, or sorry, its bids and requests for proposals. Since January 20th, I have been logging on there to see, are there set asides for women-owned businesses and diverse businesses and small businesses, and those contracts continue to come out to this day. So those at the federal level, I know that there's an executive order that says something that makes it sound like this isn't happening, but it actually is happening as of maybe yesterday, the day before, when I actually went in and checked. So this is ongoing. And then at the state and local level, there are also set asides and contracts with these goals happening every single day. So this has all continued. Now, it is, again, like I said, uncertain. Oh, yeah. I would like, since it's a small group, I know we're recording, so maybe this recording might get a little weird, but I'm happy to do a field trip at the end. Is it Justine? Jessica, sorry. Just Jessica, I would love to do a sam.gov field trip. Um, okay, Justine. And no, you're not Justine, you're Yolanda. I'm sorry, it's confusing. Um, we will do a sam.gov field trip. It'll be a lot of fun. Okay, I'm gonna go on through my presentation, but feel free to interrupt me if there's another question. And then at the end, somebody remind me that we're taking a field trip. Okay, so certification requirements. There are some basic requirements for certification that are standard across most certifications. So ownership, control, and independence are pretty standard, and I will talk in detail about what those mean. And then economic disadvantage is unique to some government certifications, and in some cases, there are tests for the size and personal net worth of the owner. So those are things to look out for and make sure you understand if you meet those requirements. Okay, ownership. All certifications, you have to have 51% ownership by qualifying individual or individuals, and they look
Marketing
at,
and
and
all the
somebody
time
needs
is
to mute their mic,
design, it's would
please.
be design manufacturing, design engineering. They all kind of work a little
Um,
differently. Those are the two we go to.
Excuse me, can you
Engineering
mute
school
your
starts out
mic?
and all that.
I don't know
I don't-
LaShonda,
It's
We'll finish
LaShonda.
this.
I'll
What
mute her.
is?
I'll mute her.
you muted her? Okay, thank you.
Okay.
Sorry, it's distracting me.
That's okay.
Ownership. All certifications are required to have at least 51% ownership by qualifying individual or individuals. They look closely at your corporate documents, your tax returns, and your initial contribution to make sure that everything that you're saying kind of lines up. So a lot of people get themselves into a little bit of a conundrum because they say, oh, I own this percentage of my company, but then they, look at their tax returns and it says a different percentage. Um, and the corporate documents say something else. So make sure that you're looking at all of these documents to make sure that the story that you're telling in the application all makes sense and lines up. Because I think what happens a lot of times, or in my experience, is people do their corporate documents when they first start the company, and then life goes on and they never go back and look at those documents because they're a small business. And the corporate documents are not updated appropriately to match the current operating state of the business. So you think the ownership is one thing, your corporate documents say another. So just make sure you're reading through those documents and understanding what they say. Excuse me. They also look at your initial contribution to start the company. So that initial contribution, if you're the only owner of your company, you do not need to worry about the initial contribution. You just have to show that you put in some money into the company. Where this becomes an issue is that if there's multiple owners of the company, you need to make sure that, if you're the 51% owner and you put in $50 to start the company, but then you have a 49% owner who put in $2 million to start the company, they're going to have a problem with that and say that the ownership percentages do not match, the the ownership percentages don't match the contribution, and there's some issues there, but that's very uncommon. Usually any initial contribution is sufficient. Okay, so in addition to ownership, you also have to control your company. So they want to make sure that, even if you own the company, that there isn't someone else who's exerting undue control over the company. So they will look closely at your documents to see that your corporate documents and your registration on the Secretary of State say that you have all of the control and voting power necessary in order to have the managerial control of the company. So you want to make sure that you understand, if you're a corporation and you have bylaws, how many directors are you supposed to have? Who are those directors? What kind of voting power do they have? All of that is really important to know. It's a good thing to know anyway, but it's also really important for certification because as the qualifying owner, you need to have the control over the company to make the major decisions of the day-to-day operations of the company. Then the indicators of operational control are also closely scrutinized. So that operational control is more of like the actual day-to-day things happening. So they'll look at who's signing checks, who's signing the lease, who's signing contracts. All of that indicates who's really, making kind of the day-to-day decisions of the company. They will also look at the resume of the qualifying owners and make sure that they have the necessary experience to control a business of that type. So if you're talking about a construction company and you have an owner who worked before she opened the construction company, worked for 20 years in banking, they're going to say, how does this person know how to run a construction company? And it might be that, this person's father owned a construction company and she grew up in construction and has worked in construction on and off throughout the years and, helped out on the weekends and nights when she wasn't working. So that's possible, but you just need to make sure that you're kind of explaining all of that in the application. And then lastly, you need to make sure that they ask who has the final decision-making authority in key management areas. So make sure that you're showing that the qualifying owner is the person who's making those key management decisions, even if they've delegated that authority to another person, which is totally fine and normal. You need to make sure that you show that the qualifying business owner has delegated that authority and retains the final, they have the power to override that person or to fire that person if they are not making the correct decisions, but that they have the final decision-making authority in that area. Okay. Or the kind of third piece of this is independence of the company. So in general, you need to make sure that your business is not unduly dependent on another business. And what that means is, if there's another business that you are associated with, and that business, let's say, goes out of business today, they go bankrupt, belly up today. If that would also cause your business to go belly up, that's a problem. But if that business went away and your business would continue to thrive, then there's not a problem. But that line is very hard to draw. So there's a couple things that they look at to try to determine the independence of the company. So they want to make sure that your loan agreements, they look at your loan agreements, the employment history of the qualifying owner and other key employees, the contractual relationships, the equipment, and any shared space or shared employees. They kind of look at all of these factors together. And if there's any of these things, or if there's too much interaction with another company on these things, they will investigate that to see, what is the nature of this relationship. So, for example, if let's say you bought a piece of equipment from another business and they see that, oh, they bought the equipment from this business, they'll ask for, show us the purchase agreement. If the equipment's purchased at fair market value, not a problem. If the equipment is purchased and it was given at a deal or a discount, and then there's other interaction, they're going to start to feel like there's too much of a close, cozy relationship with this other business. So they really just look at these things to make sure that you are operating independently. For most companies, this is not a problem, and this rarely comes up, I would say, but it's just something to keep in mind, mostly because if you start getting a lot of weird questions about shared space, shared employees, employment history, you're going to be like, why are they asking me these questions? And this is why they're having to make sure that you are operating independently. Okay. Okay, so like I said, on some government certifications, there are requirements for economic disadvantage, and this typically means that the business is a small business and that the owner is an economically disadvantaged individual. So a small business is the test is usually gross receipts averaged over a certain period of years that need to be under a certain size standard as defined by the SBA. The Small Business Administration puts out a list of all of these different business industries, and then they have definitions of what qualifies as a small business. I could actually give an entire talk about just this topic, because then we start to talk about affiliation with other businesses, which is a whole very intense topic that I will not get into here. But like I said, I could give an entire hour talk on affiliation and small business size standards. But that's just something that you should know about. And then economic disadvantage means typically that you have a personal net worth under a certain limit. With the number, the DBE limit used to be 1.32 million. So that's a pretty high number because they exclude the value of your personal residence and the value of the applicant business in addition to some other exclusions. So there's a lot of room in that 1.32 million. And then some other certifications look at adjusted gross income and your total assets as well. But very rarely are those anything that's going to stop anybody from getting certified. They just don't want, Oprah to get out here getting certified. Okay, so types of certifications. I'm gonna pause for water quickly. There are a variety of certifications. So now you've decided you want to get certified, you need to make sure that you're choosing the best certification for you or your business. And that is dictated by the client you are interested in working for. So we're here talking about government certifications. So there's federal, state, and local government certifications. There is no just one unified certification option, unfortunately, because actually just because so you need to just make sure you understand how the certification is working. A common misconception is that federal certifications are accepted nationwide by all governments, and that is not true. Federal certifications are for doing work with the federal government. So if you're interested in doing work with the federal government, beautiful. But if you're not, it's maybe not a great idea for you. Some certifications for the federal government are done as a self-certification through sam.gov, and I'll show you a little bit more on that in a second. But that's a great option if you're like, I might want to do work with the federal government, but you don't want to go through a whole certification process. There are options there. And then the city of St. Louis has a certification process. This is if you want to work with the city of St. Louis itself. So the city of St. Louis is buying orange cones and you want to sell them orange cones. That is what that certification is for. It is not for doing work in the city of St. Louis anywhere. That's not how it works. It's the city of St. Louis, the government entity is the buyer. So just make sure you understand that distinction. And then the same goes for the state of Missouri. So if you want to work directly with the state of Missouri, that is the certification that you need. It is not to be certified to work in the state of Missouri. It's if you want to work directly with that government agency. Last on the list are the WBENC and the CMSDC certifications. These are private certifications for doing work in the private sector. So if you want to work with a Fortune 500 corporation, think Boeing, Walgreens, Caterpillar, those are the companies that you work with. These certifications are typically accepted. So the WBENC certification is for women and the CMSDC certification is for minorities. So if you're interested in private work in the private sector, these are the certifications. This is all very, very complicated and complex. So I'm just kind of touching on it. And I want to show you this again, very complicated and complex federal certification kind of cheat sheet that I have. But what I want to highlight is where is it? Anyway, there's two of these certifications are self-certifications. Oh, here it is. Self-certify through sam.gov. So the small business certification and the small disadvantaged business certifications are self-certifications that you can get by logging into sam.gov and just identifying yourself as a small business or a small disadvantaged business. They will recognize you as such and allow you to bid on set-asides. And we're going to go into sam.gov and take a little field trip at the end of this to see what does a set-aside actually look like. Okay. I'm going to just touch lightly into the certification process. So this is the common question that we get, like, how long does this take? The answer most of the time is that this first section, prepare and submit your application, takes the longest. The reason is that you have to gather a whole bunch of documentation, and a lot of it is harder than you might anticipate, so it takes a while. But so this is when you're gathering your corporate documents, your tax returns, your bank signature card, your resume. All of that takes a really long time to put together. Sometimes other people have it already and buttoned up, but my advice is to gather everything in a folder on your computer that's on that required documents list and make sure that you are have those at the ready for when you start the application and start answering all their questions. And then typically at the end of the application, there's a place for you to upload all of the supporting documents. So you're going to fill out the application and then upload all of your documents. That part takes the longest, and I can't tell you how long that will take for you. I don't know your business. I don't know what your documents look like. I don't know if you did your taxes or not. Hopefully you did, but that is the part that takes the longest. Once the application goes to you've hit submit and goes to the agency reviews your documents. Typically, it depends on the agency, but 90 days is a typical review period, sometimes 120 days. During that review period, they'll look at your documents, they'll ask you follow-up questions. Usually there's 2 or 3 rounds of those follow-up questions, and then there's a site visit. So they will go and do a site visit either, back in the day before COVID, they were done in person. Now they're mostly done on Zoom or on the phone. And it's not, people get nervous about the site visit. It's not a gotcha. It's more to make sure that you really are the owner who controls this company and kind of can talk intelligently about your business. That's all they're really looking for. And then once you've gone through that process, they will submit your application to kind of a review committee who will sign off on the application, and then you'll get your certification letter. So all of that, the review process takes a few months to get certified. So again, I can't emphasize how important it is to have your ducks in a row before you go and get certified. Make sure you're putting in all the documents, you're reading everything carefully, etc. Okay, so we have gotten one very good question. I am going to see if I can just jump over into sam.gov now, because that was an excellent question by Jessica. Oh, can you all see my screen?
Yep.
Great. So this is login.gov. You have to log in here. The federal government is all about security. And I have to put in my code. Okay. So this is a website called sam.gov. This is where the government does a whole bunch of stuff. A whole, whole bunch of stuff is happening on sam.gov, but one of the things that is happening here is they post contracts or post contract. They post live bid opportunities. So let me see if I can show you this. So the searching in here is not particularly intuitive, but I'm gonna look for a woman-owned small business set-aside contract. Okay. So I just asked for all of the current bid opportunities that are active at this moment that are set aside for a woman-owned small business, which is a specific federal certification for doing business with the federal government, and they set aside certain contracts so they don't allow anyone who isn't a woman-owned small business to bid on these contracts. They only want women-owned small businesses to bid. The federal government currently has 195 of these currently advertised, which in my experience is a pretty standard number. So this is to answer your question, Jessica. Despite everything, these contracts are still happening, much to my surprise, to be honest with you. So this is all happening. I'll try to scan through here and find a good one for us to look at. These are, Department of Defense, Air Force, a lot of DoD, it looks like. Okay, okay, these are missile hangar doors. I'm trying to look for something a little bit less.
She said she can't get hers to do that filter.
Oh. Okay, well, so are you, Jessica, if you were on the, all I did was, I don't know how to help you if I can't see it. But all I did was go to the set aside section and click on WOSB. I don't know, someone. Typically, I'll try to, let me see if I can just do it again for you. Um, so I am here on like this is a um main page, and sometimes Sam is tricky is a very generous term, but you have to click this filter and then click on contracting. That might be the section that you missed. I do this sometimes without thinking, so I do it because I do it so often. But if you click on contracting, Jessica, that might be the issue that you're having. And let me search another one. I'll do
She says
go ahead.
she got it, she said.
Oh,
Yeah,
great. Okay, and then 8A is another one. So this is 8A is for folks who are socially and economically disadvantaged. There's 212 of these. And again, it's a lot, but this is GSA. I'm gonna try to find a good one for us to look at. Okay, so this is for solid weight. Work for warriors. Okay, let's just look at this. So this is an 8A set aside. Updated, combined. Let me see if this is an actual bid. This is a lot of information about the bid. But this is set aside from, let's see. And then here, I'm just giving you guys kind of a tour of what this looks like. These attachments, these are the meat of the bid. And one of these, a lot of these are attachments, but one of these is the actual bid document. It's probably this one right here. And this is the actual document that tells you the parameters of what you have to do in order to respond. So this is what you need to read to learn how do you respond to the actual solicitation. I will stop right there because I hope, Jessica, that I answered your question about sam.gov. And I'm going to stop sharing and just see if anyone else has any questions.
are there any common questions that usually come up on presentations that you give that we may have not asked yet?
I tried to address those. A lot of the questions come up around, I have this kind of business. What certification should I get? Which is a great question to ask. And usually, it just really depends on your industry and the age of your business, how, robust of a business do you have, that kind of thing. So there's a very specific kind of strategy to all of that. So that's the kind of advising that we love to do. Trying to think what else comment, the comment, how long is this going to take? Or I have this very unusual ownership circumstance. Am I going to qualify? And I say, maybe not. But those, I'm trying to think if there's anything else. Yeah, a lot of it turns into how am I actually going to use this and get a bid? And then a lot of the questions we're getting right now, Yolanda, are around like what Jessica asked, like what in the world is going on and should I do this? And the answer that I am giving is if you're interested in state and local state and local work, go
Mhm.
ahead and get certified. They're still certifying. It's business as usual. If you're talking about federal work, I would not do it. I would not get certified at this moment. I would wait until 2026, let the dust settle, let things kind of flatten out and normalize, which I think they will, and then go get certified. This is not the moment to be jumping into federal contracting if you're not doing it already. I would focus your efforts on state and local right now, and make sure that you're, doing everything you can, getting certified there, and kind of building your capacity with state and local government work.
Ashley has a question.
And Ashley, yes, Venus or Brittany, if you could put the link in the chat, we do offer
Of
one-on-one
course.
consultations.
And also, I have a link in the chat as well for you guys to sign in. That would be great. But thank you
Everybody's got a
for
link in the chat.
that is exciting. Thank you. That was very informative. Thank you so much, and especially with the temperature that our government is in now, this is really good. Because it gives you most of the information. If someone viewing this later at a later date, they're able to click on the calendar and set up with Brittany as well. Correct?
Yes.
Awesome.
Or not with Brittany,
I
with
mean, Venus.
With
with
Venus,
Venus,
yeah.
and Venus will
Sorry.
loop me in. I don't have a Calendly, but Venus will loop me in. Um, and we're happy to help. 'Cause
Awesome. We're so
we do.
glad that you're here helping because I'm sure I had a lot of questions. I'm sure everyone did.
It's
Well,
wild. Like I said, I've been doing this for 15 years and I never thought we would see this. So
I think no one is, but you know what? We're resilient and we'll weather this like anything else. Hey, we made it through a pandemic. We can deal with
true.
this. Okay.
Yes. And
All right.
Jessica asked if SAM is federal government only. That is correct. SAM is for
Okay.
doing work with the federal government. And Jessica, we are happy to help you if you're looking to do work with. We focus on working with your local Department of Transportation. So here in Missouri, it's MoDOT. But if you are interested in working at the state and local level, we're happy to help you with that.
Awesome. Awesome. Well, does anyone have any more questions? If not, we'll give you a minute to decide. You can always put it in the chat. I don't mind asking for you. Oh, that's great. Okay, did you see Jessica's question? It says, "Oh, that's great. I have a box truck company looking to see what contracts are out there with my local agency."
Jessica, let's set up a one-on-one consultation. We can talk about that.
Awesome. Awesome. Thanks, Venus. She said, happy to help. This has been so informative. Thank you so much, Maura. I really
Thank you.
appreciate you. Do you have any last words before we log off?
Nope. Just,
Well,
just come talk to us. That's what we're here for.
I'm so glad you're here. We may have to have you guys back again because this was very
Oh,
informative.
great.
But until then, thank you so much. Have
Thank
a
you,
good
everyone. Thank
remainder of your
you.
day. Bye bye.
Bye.